Good morning. As always, it's a lovely morning here in New York City, and I'm happy to be talking with you. I am peeved, and I think you should know what I'm peeved about. I'm peeved about states' rights and having 50 fiefdoms and nobody going by the Constitution. Let me amend that. Let's say that I don't like the current GOP's interpretation of their own laws, and they're not constitutional. As far as the Constitution is concerned, everyone has the right to vote. The people can overturn any legislation that the government in power deems to enforce upon the people illegally. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say gerrymandering is allowed, or that hand-picked partisan secretaries of states or people who look at voting ballots are allowed. Nowhere. In fact, you should look at Michigan and California. I've detailed how they have the people's representatives in power. Did they have a ballot measure? You bet. Did they get the requisite number of citizens to sign that ballot measure? They did. And now it is a non-partisan way to vote. Nobody disenfranchised. Nobody. So what's happening in the states? Mostly the GOP. It's not legal. It's not part of the Constitution. It disenfranchises many. And if there is something that is similar to a poll tax, that's not allowed by the Constitution either. So start questioning what these governors are doing and what their legislators are doing. If it's not constitutional and it's not written in the Constitution, then by golly, it's up to the citizens to create the government and the system of voting they want. And it pays to do it now before the 2022 primaries. You don't have much time to act, but act you must. Can the filibuster be overturned? You bet. That's not in the Constitution either. So why should we go by a mechanism that isn't even ratified in the Constitution? That's just putting up a way to stymie the executive branch from doing what's right for we the people. Nothing says you can't change the rules of the filibuster so that A, it either doesn't exist, or the majority of senators who are in Congress can actually vote on the bills that they want to pass. And they can do that with the National Voting Rights Bill and make it the law of the land. Nothing says you can't be creative, and you should be. When you're dealing with a party that goes to extremes to make sure that they are only the party that can be voted into office time and time again, and not cater to the will of the people, well, then that party should be out. And if both parties can't behave in a way that saves our democracy, then both parties should be out. I don't care how good their intentions, right? The way to hell is paved with good intentions. We need action and law. We need to make sure that 320 million people, or whoever is of voting age in our society, can vote and can vote freely on the day of registration if necessary, with no excuse absentee ballots, and make it easy. Transportation for the poor and middle class is a problem. It's a problem getting them to work, to get jobs. Now they need to vote. Make it as easy as possible. Make it an opt-out system, not an opt-in. If they can't get transportation to work, how are they going to get it to vote? Especially if you don't have a national holiday for voting. It makes it very difficult. No excuse, absentee ballots are the way to go. If Biden is having problems getting people to fill his cabinet positions, and certainly to fill the Board of Governors so that we can get rid of DeJoy as the Postmaster General, well, as soon as there's a recess, the executive branch can fill all those positions with acting and empowered people in every one of his empty cabinet positions. No need to wait on Congress for that. Get it done. This is not like any other year. This is a year where our Constitution was challenged, where people challenged the methodology of our elections. Our elections were won fair and square. You wouldn't know it from some of the newspapers because they don't like to have a story that's nice and calm and even. No siree. They prefer to get everyone riled up and excited about arguments and issues that are of no importance. Or they create the misinformation themselves. And when they do, we have a Communications Act. It's high time. We've got somebody there who's an acting head of the FCC, and that person ought to be empowered to get rid of all the misinformation that the public is hearing, especially if it has to do with vaccines and our climate. After all, there's no wondering whether or not climate crises are here. California is rationing water. The Smithsonian is losing archives to water. So one place has drought, the other place has floods. Seattle now has massive rainfall, more than it ever had before. And the Netherlands and Belgium are experimenting with old levees to see what works, because their countries are becoming flooded out and the old methodologies are not working. And they've invited us to participate and anyone else in the world to participate who has similar problems. Well, we should be running over there and cooperating and giving of our talents so that we can crowdsource the problems appropriately. Doesn't look like that's happening either. And as I said, this is a year that's really pivotal. Never before have I seen someone try to create a coup in our country. Never before have I seen people who are still in Congress part of that coup, when they could have been removed by the 14th Amendment. Same for anyone who's in the legislature of the states. If they took part in the coup and they aided and abetted that coup on January 6th, they should automatically be removed from office and disbarred. Which brings me to my next pet peeve. Governors of states telling people they're going to pay them unemployment insurance if they deny their job responsibility and seek unemployment rather than getting the vaccination. That is horrific. That means that you who have been vaccinated, who know better, who have access to all the monoclonal antibodies you could desire, you are telling others who can be readily affected and infected by the COVID virus that they can be paid and others can't because they denied to get the vaccine when the vaccine saves lives. You know, my son told me an interesting story yesterday. He had seen one of his friends who he hadn't seen in many, many months, maybe even a year. And she said, "Gee, I was wondering what happened to you and why I didn't see you." And he said, "I really have to be honest with you. I didn't want to argue with you. My mom is going through chemotherapy. I can't afford to be in contact with anyone who's not vaccinated. In fact, I've gotten my third booster shot so that I can be with my mother. But I can't afford to expose myself to anyone who hasn't been vaccinated for fear that I would harm her." And I think for those of you who are unvaccinated, and we know you can be infected many times, and the Omicron variant doesn't affect us so much if we're vaccinated and boosted. But you guys are being hospitalized at the rate of over 76%, and a lot of you aren't making it. Why would you listen to your governors tell you not to be vaccinated? There's hypocrisy afoot, and it's a hypocrisy that somehow benefits them. I don't understand how the death of any American benefits someone with legislative power, but it must, because it's not ideology that's driving this. It's profit and money, just like everything else. So my feeling is I take care of those people who are espousing misinformation on the vaccine and climate. I'd get the FCC and the Communications Act after them, and I would delete them from the social media platforms, and I would fine them heavily according to what their income and revenue stream is. I would take 10%. Make it a harsh way to go if you lie about the vaccines and their efficacy, and you lie about the climate and what it's doing to our people. And as far as gerrymandering is concerned and restricting the right to vote, it's not in the Constitution. It's totally illegal. Ask Merrick Garland if you need a way to have a ballot measure prior to the primary. Just like the Heritage Society can churn out ways to stymie voting, I'm sure we can churn out ways to reinstate our rights. And you know what? We're not victims. We're not victims of all. We're Americans, and Americans stand tall. That's how I feel. I don't want anyone telling me what to do and how to do it, especially if it's not in my own interests. I only follow good advice and wisdom. Am I fallible? Sure. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. And when I do, I apologize and I regret it. Would I harm anybody? Never. Have I competed? You bet, on my own terms. So let's start competing, folks. Competing for the right to vote. Competing for the right to have life, liberty and property, competing for equal justice under the law. And let's start having the government we need, not what is habitual for us, not what we think we need, but what we know we need based on the facts. So, sorry about that. I have been awake. I've been thinking about this, listening to all people on all sides of the argument speak, and I thought, it's time for me to speak my mind too, and tell you how I really feel. And this is it. I feel American, and I'm proud to be an American. And I've had 3 generations of men serve in the U.S. Army, and I'm proud of them. And for me, I don't think you can question my patriotism at all. But I question everyone's patriotism who says they want death for our citizens and not life, and not a good life, and a life where they're thriving and retrained and re-educated. This is not 50 fiefdoms. This is the United States of America. And as Eisenhower said, one nation, indivisible, under God. And that's what we are, folks. Nothing else is really of any importance. That's what we want. So have a blessed day. It's a little cold here, but so what? And I hope to see you next week. Bye now, and take care.